Hello everybody, my name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today we'll be talking about Willy Rice and we will be continuing our series on Docent Dumps. Now, to catch you up, because it has been about 2 weeks since I've ran a story on Docent Research Group. Docent Research Group is pretty much the big bad. They are a kingpin in the downgrade of evangelicalism in the United States and perhaps abroad, but certainly in the United States, certainly in mainstream evangelicalism, such as Reformed or Baptist traditions. This corporation is playing a serious role in the downgrade of these institutions. And the Southern Baptist Convention specifically is what we'll be referencing in today's video. In some of the last two videos that I've talked about Docent Research Group, I exposed two Southern Baptist churches. Actually, three if you count the church of the member of the writer of Docent Group. So the guy who wrote the sermons for two other Southern Baptist churches was also in a Southern Baptist church. But let's talk about the Southern Baptist churches. SBC Wichita Falls, which is a mega church in Texas, and the one where Robert Jeffress actually came from before he preached at FBC Dallas. He preached at FBC Wichita Falls. And Bob McCartney of FBC Wichita Falls is an ardent Ed Litton supporter. So what does that mean? It means he's compromised. He's not one of the good guys on any of the major issues concerning the Southern Baptist Convention. He's going to be firing friendly fire at you if you're trying to fight to save the Southern Baptist Convention. That's what that means. And then we have Redeemer Fellowship in Kansas City, Missouri. They're a woke church. There's not much else to say about them. They're just your garden variety woke church. So let's talk about Willy Rice. So who is Willy Rice? Now, Willy Rice is a Southern Baptist elite. He is an elite in the Southern Baptist Convention. He gave the annual sermon at the annual Southern Baptist Convention of 2021, which means this guy's a major player. That's why he has that. But he's also a mega church pastor in his own right in Florida, and that's what we'll be talking about today. He is a client of Docent Research Group. At least his church is. So before that, let's actually respond to some of his annual sermon at the SBC Convention of 2021. Let's actually roll some tape, and I want you to watch because he is dangerous. And he knows exactly what he's doing.
We know where the road to theological liberalism leads. It leads to death. Theological liberalism or progressivism is not an on-ramp to Christianity, it is an off-ramp. Theological compromise to accommodate the whims of culture is just a halfway house on the road to unbelief. David Young wrote, "When you marry the spirit of this age, you'll become a widow in the next." What appears as shiny, glamorous, and popular today may be revealed as wood, hay, and straw tomorrow. Now, we have faced an unusually rancorous debate over critical race theory. I often thought, never have so many people spoken so loud and so long about which they understood so little. But boy, we've had a discussion, and it's a serious discussion. We should not dismiss the concerns. Critical race theory at its core, as popularly understood and commonly applied, offers a flawed diagnosis, a hopeless prognosis, and writes a powerless prescription rooted in materialistic humanism and political power. It is powerless because it cannot cure the deepest ills of the human heart. It brings no transformation, produces no love, and results in no justice. It cannot produce what only the gospel can produce: a changed heart and a new humanity.
So he talks about the division about critical race theory and then acts as though you plebs can't understand the issue. So you're making a giant issue out of something you don't understand. That is such an elitist mentality because critical race theory is not hard to understand. If you can understand Marxism, you can understand critical race theory. It's the same thing, except instead of the class, the rich and the poor in classical Marxism, you replace it with white and black. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. The engine and the car is the same. The color is different. And, that wasn't meant to be a pun, but I see that it is. So it's not hard to understand. He makes it seem like you can't possibly understand this issue. You're making it out to be something that it's not. And then he's trying to throw a bone your way, and this is where the deception comes in. He's trying to act like he's denouncing it, but he's not actually denouncing it. His main criticism of critical race theory, if you're calling that a criticism of critical race theory, is that it's not the gospel. That's it. That's his criticism of critical race theory. It's not the gospel. Well, gee, you could say that about anything, even benign philosophies, even good ones, you could say that about. Just to come up with sure, Adam Smith's economics is good, but it's not the gospel. You see what I'm saying? Sure, Thomas Sowell's a good philosopher, but, he's not Jesus. It's such a useless critique. You know who it sounds like? It sounds like John Piper. That was basically his critique of critical race theory. Very close. He basically what John Piper said was his criticisms of critical race theory were really criticisms of materialism, which was not specific to the issue at hand. That's why John Piper's critique of critical race theory was wholly inadequate. And I believe I did videos on that almost a year ago. So Willy Rice has been using Docent Research Group. And again, he's an elite at the Southern Baptist Convention. So, let's just roll through some of the research. So this is Grayson Pope is the employee of Docent Research Group that has been the unwitting source for this Docent Dump. And, this is his portfolio, and he's advertising some of the work he's done. The Protestia article, which broke this scandal, has mostly focused on the fact that he has been ghostwriting for the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the ERLC, which is a Southern Baptist entity, and a very bad Southern Baptist entity at that. So a lot of his focus has been on prison reform and stuff like that. So then we got some Bible studies. More Than Words is the one that we'll be focusing on today. Well, we're not really going to do a deep dive on that study, but he wrote it for Calvary Church through Docent Research Group. And then he wrote some other stuff. And I suppose we can cover this in a later edition of Docent Dumps. But let's look at Calvary Church. If we look at the PDF file, it's Calvary Church. And I've skimmed through this document. It's pretty benign. It's banal. There's not a whole lot going on here as far as I can tell. And I don't feel like reading the whole thing to pick out small issues. But, let's go back to that logo. Calvary Church. Pay attention. Pay attention. Calvary Church, Willy Rice. There's your evidence. That's your evidence that he's been using Docent Research Group. Now, the reason why I want to point this out is, how does Docent Research Group advertise their services? They advertise it to pastors to free up time for them. That's the goal, the stated goal of Docent Research Group. Now we know what they actually mean by that is they'll write the sermons for you. They'll hand you the sermon and you just preach out of it like your Mark Driscoll, to throw him under the bus. So that's what Docent Research Group actually does, and this group is beyond compromise in its ideology. You could certainly say that Grayson Pope is woke, considering the material he did for the Jude 3 project, and I suppose that'll be a subject for another video perhaps. But, Willy Rice uses Docent Research Group, and it's unlikely that someone beneath him would be the first person in his church to use Docent Research Group without him, the senior pastor, setting the precedent first. Generally, such a high budget item, such as writing devotional study or small group study material, you think that if they were going to go to Docent to do that material, they would have gone to Docent to start writing sermons for them first. And another thing to point out is that Grace and Pope are unwitting source for this information. And just a point of order, this video, this article that will be a companion piece with this video, also check that out at evangelicaldarkweb.org, can only have been done with reader tips, and I pursued a reader tip. You can submit your own tip at evangelicaldarkweb.org and submit a tip. Pretty easy to navigate. New site, and you're going to want to check that out. I'm still doing some shakeout testing on the website, but so far it's getting better and better each day. So bear with me if you're experiencing any sort of inconvenience. So Grace and Pope, our unwitting source, is not a sermon writer. He's a curriculum writer. That's been his advertised services at Docent Research Group. He's helped write curriculum for churches. What we also know about how Docent Research Group operates is that larger clients have multiple contractors of Docent working for them. So Calvary Church is a larger client. They're a multi-campus church, multi-campus megachurch in Florida. They could probably use multiple Docent Research clients, and Grace and Pope would most certainly qualify as an auxiliary to that rather than the main team leader. Because you would think the team leader would actually be writing the sermons. So when we talked about Greg Lamb in the last few videos on this, he was writing the sermons and he was also a team leader. And he wrote sermons for 2 Southern Baptist churches, which we talked about earlier in this video. And, if we go back to North Valley Community Church, that was a smaller church. It wanted to be the mega church down the street, and it was so desperate and obvious. But they probably only needed him because he was a solo researcher. So he was the only client or only contractor working on that contract. But Willy Rice is a bigger fish. He could probably pull in multiple people, or at least have one person that's not Grayson Pope that's the team leader on this assignment. So, we nabbed the auxiliary here, not the person who was probably a bit more responsible about not disclosing their client information. And Willy Rice, again, is an elite in the Southern Baptist Convention. He has used Docent Research Group. And furthermore, this demonstrates the pattern that we are seeing. The pastors and churches that are using Docent Research Group are all compromised. These are all churches that are towing the corruption in the Southern Baptist Convention, like Willy Rice, Bob McCartney as well, and FBC, Redeemer Fellowship Kansas City as well as them. Or they're just so desperate to be mega churches, so desperate to be that Mark Driscoll, that James McDonald, and looking up to corrupt people. And Docent Research Group is a kingpin in the downgrade of evangelicalism. I can't stress that enough. That's why I've been going after them so hard. And that's why I want to expose not just the organization, but their clients. Their clients deserve to be exposed because they are participants in this downgrade. So that's all I got to say about that. If you like this content, also subscribe to the channel and also like the video because early likes really help with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to support this type of research, you can support the Evangelical Dark Web at evangelicaldarkweb.com/join. And you can subscribe to become a member of the Evangelical Dark Web. And there's certain rewards that come with the tier level system. I basically built a Patreon system. And I urge you to, consider making that a part of your subscriptions if you subscribe to other channels. So have a blessed day. Let me know what you think about what I think, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Look, CRT is a thing. Marxism is a thing. Socialism is a thing. I'll tell you what else is a thing. Being a jerk is a thing too.